Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Earlier today, we did a video talking about my questions and thoughts that I have towards Gaijin, and hopefully get some answers at some point. And I thought now we would have a look at some of the community questions that were posted on the War Thunder official channel. We'll go through some of the top ones, probably not all of them. There's a lot of kind of like copy-paste ones or ones which kind of go down the same ilk, so we'll try and answer them in general. And what I'll do is I'll give what I think is going to be Gaijin's response, and then I'll give my response, because obviously they're different. A lot of people seem to think that I work for Gaijin. Never have. Doubt I ever will. My actual professional life is not in gaming. It's actually in a completely different field. And also at the same time, I like having independence from Gaijin and also War Thunder so I can actually speak my mind. The only affiliation I have with Gaijin is the affiliate link that you see in the description and also the comments. And pretty much all that is a way to give you guys a discount and also support the channel as you go through it. It doesn't change any of my opinions on the game. The only thing I've ever been asked, basically, from Gaijin themselves is just to not lie in the videos, which I think is a completely fair point and should be kind of a standard across the general industry. So, yeah, this is just going to be my raw opinion, as it always is when it comes to the channel. If you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started. So the first question is from a guy called Death Trooper, and it says, do you have any plans of making bombers more useful? And I'm pretty sure what Gaijin will say is, as always, when it comes to War Thunder, we have many plans in order to try and make every vehicle in the game fun to play. We see that with bombers, there are some people who are not enjoying their time in them, and therefore we will take this into account as we continue to develop the game modes in air, adding new targets and also new objectives to go after, such as the new AI AAs that we've added, and also more realistic vehicle types. When it comes to my answer, the problem is I don't know how you actually make them more quote-unquote useful. I think bombers in general have a fundamental problem where some of them are really good, maybe overpowered, and then other ones are completely worthless. And that has always been the issue, at least in my head, when it comes to bombing in War Thunder. The large heavy bombers such as the ME-264, the HE-177, even other ones such as the BV-238, just to name like 3 German examples, all of these vehicles are actually really good at what they do and also quite hard to kill. The only nerf they've kind of had over the previous period of time is a pretty simple one, and it was the fact that now you have the trails if you go high enough altitude in a realistic to be able to take stuff out. But the problem is these types of bombers, they don't really fit properly when it comes to any of the other game modes, apart from in naval, where most people don't play. There's actually quite a lot of usage for large bombers in naval because of the fact that you can just donk on ships and then kind of go from there. When it comes to medium and light bombers, they either don't have enough bombs to justify actually using them, or at the same time, they don't have enough speed or maneuverability to survive. Or you even have ones in real life, such as the Japanese bombers, which were designed for a specific role that doesn't work when it comes to War Thunder, because of the simple fact that they were designed for long-range bombing missions. So they have a lot of fuel, and they have a lot of bombs. They don't necessarily have a ton of speed or a ton of defensive armament because they needed to be as light as possible in order to go those long ranges. So how do you balance these types of vehicles? Because you have the light bombers, the medium bombers, the heavy bombers. And as I said, the heavy bombers a lot of the time are actually pretty good. The medium bombers usually have a niche role in ground CAS sometimes, and they're able to bring in the big, bombs to annihilate stuff. Things like the Tu-2, for example, kind of fit into that role. And then you have the light bombers, which, to be honest, unless you're doing something which is very kind of nitpicky in Air Simulator or Air Realistic or maybe certain areas of Air Arcade, they're not really going to be that useful. So how do you balance out these 3 types? How do you actually make something that fits all 3 of them? Because what they've tried in the past is different objectives, which has kind of worked, but then you find out that the heavy bombers are actually good at nuking all of the other objectives too. So basically, it's just makes sense to use those. So I don't know how you actually do it unless you make more of a PvE focused game mode. But then the problem with that is longevity. And one of the things a lot of the guys talk about in the questions for this as well, which is probably not something I'll go after, but it says, when strategic bombers with their game mode, will you consider adding more game modes, including PvE game modes? Like, these types of ideas are also kind of there. And the problem that I have with those ideas is I think Gaijin should try them and test them, just like they have a bunch of other game modes, but I just don't understand the longevity of something like that. If you make like a PvE bomber game mode that makes it kind of easy to play, and you just kind of, you know, go to an objective and then you leave and then you just do that over again, how many times are you actually going to play that before you just kind of get sick of it? You know what I mean? I feel like it's going to be a lot. You're going to play it like maybe 5 times and then you're just going to not touch it again. Just like how most people actually do with the other PvE game modes that exist, such as Air Assault and Ground Assault. And I know, yes, they could probably develop them more, but at the end of the day, it's just not going to work because people get bored of them and they just want to play the standard stuff. So don't know how you deal with that. The next question is from Dan H, and it says, is there any plan to decompress all BRs? Now, Gaijin will say to this the same that they always say, which is pretty simple. Yes, in the future, we will continue to decompress BRs, just like we have done in the past, when enough vehicles are at specific BRs, and when we feel there is enough variety at different BRs in order to decompress them. In the recent BR changes, we ended up decompressing not just naval, but also top-tier air, showing that we will continue to do this. And to be honest, my response is basically the same. The idea that there isn't any plans to decompress the BRs or anything like that is kind of weird. And I feel like this is kind of one of those foundational questions that always gets asked every like 3 months. When are you going to decompress the BRs? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? And then if you actually have a look at, you know, the last year, you actually find out they decompressed them like 3 or 4 times. And it's just kind of crazy. Like, if you have a think about aviation and how much it's grown over the last few years, what you'll find is it's actually gone up probably by like 3.0 BR. And then when it comes to ground, it's gone up by a few, from like 11.3 to 11.7 to 12.0. And then obviously with naval this year, going from, what was it, 7.0 to 8.7. So decompression has been happening over and over and over again. But one of the most upvoted comments is about more plans to decompress BRs, because I feel like people have this like fictional idea in their head of where their standard is in terms of what should happen with the decompression of BRs. Like, you always see it in posts every so often. You'll see the guys who are like, oh no, once it's a 15.0, that's it. We're good. Like that, we got to aim for that. And it's like, why? What does that mean? Oh, well, you know, you just got to aim for it because it's a nice number. All right. Oh, well, when you get to 15, it's good. Oh, well, what about 20? 20 sounds good. So yeah, it's, at the end of the day, they have specific criteria that they need to hit in order to decompress BRs. Usually that's amount of player base at that level, the amount of vehicles at that level as well, and also, of course, competitiveness of it. The only area of the game that doesn't really work like this seems to be naval, because they're trying to actually save it, and therefore they're being forced into changes to try and make it actually usable. Now, whether that's actually happening or not, or even happened, is probably, well, it probably hasn't happened. If you look at the stats and stuff like StatShark and stuff like that, naval really has gone down a crater. But that's more down to, in my opinion, the changes they've made to naval arcades specifically, basically nuking the aiming system, making it very, very dull to play. The other part of it that I think is also very important when it comes to decompression is, as I said, this will always be a constant topic, because it's always the easy one to kind of default back on. It's kind of the same one as, when will you reduce the grind, right? And it's just one of those that's always going to come up every time as the top topic. The next question is from Wolvis, and it says, when will we finally get the ability to ban more than one map? Now, when it comes to Gaijin, I'm pretty sure they're going to say something like, the map rotation filter has been fantastic because of the fact that people can choose what they want to play. Now they have the like and the dislike function, and also the ability to ban one map. We have found that people have had a much better time in the game. Unfortunately, at the moment, there are certain areas of the game that do not have enough maps dedicated to them in order to ban more than one of them. There are certain areas that only have a few, and we're trying to expand those, and will do in the future. One of those areas is top tier rare, where we have recently added 2 or 3 more maps to the map pool, where previously there was only 3 or 4. And then my answer is pretty much that too. Like, at the end of the day, they can only give people the ability to ban more maps when there is more maps in the pool. Because one of the problems you're going to run into is if you add an additional map ban to the pool, you'll end up where people just won't be able to find matches because the people who are queuing all have different banned maps. And then you'll have to change the system, so therefore it will force certain people on maps that they are banned, and then it kind of puts distrust in the whole system and everything falls apart. There's a lot of areas of the game where you could actually just ban 2 maps and you'd be fine. Like low tier and mid tier ground would be fine. High tier and top tier ground would probably be fine. Naval, I mean, there is a bit of a problem with how many maps are in Naval, but a lot of them play the same anyway, so it doesn't really matter. In Air is the real issue. At top tier Air, you really have a very, very small amount of maps. And if you actually have a look at the kind of map rotation filter, like if you actually check out the preferred maps in Aerialistic, you'll find that from 10.7 plus, there is a very, very small pool. You basically have the Operation Spain, which exists. You also have, let's see, what else is in the map rotation filter? You also have access to Sinai, the operation. You have Pradesh, which is there. You have Operation Vietnam, so there's 3. You have Smolensk, which is also there. And then you have Mysterious Valley and another version of Mysterious Valley. Then you have the Falkland Islands, the Rocky Canyon, and then also Golan Heights and Afghanistan. So right now, if you have a look at like all of the different maps, you literally so you have 4 versions of Afghanistan. You have 1 of Denmark, you have the Falklands, which they just recently added, Rocky Canyon that came in last year, so that's 4 maps. Then you have Golan Heights, and then a few versions of that. You have City as well, and then you have Pyrenees. So you have around 6 to 8 maps which are there, where some of them were literally added only maybe a few months ago or even before then. And if any of you have actually played the top tier of Air, what you'll find is it will literally just rotate the same 3 maps over and over again, because there'll be people in the matchmaker who are banned the other maps, so therefore you just will never see them as you're going around. So if you add 2 bans to everybody, that doubles the amount of maps that are banned in the matchmaking pool. So if you only have, let's say, 8 maps, which is what they have right now, and every different person bans different maps, so they don't all ban the same maps, you are never going to find any battles. Where right now in the system 1 works, and maybe in the future, as they add more maps, they can add more bans. That's pretty much how it works. And it's exactly the same as their reasoning behind reducing the RP or anything like that. It's literally just a numbers game. And if the numbers don't line up, then they don't line up. Now, we can always discuss, are the numbers correct to line up or not? But yeah, that's just kind of how it goes. Then we have Lane and Friends Music, and he says, is there a possibility of adding new permanent game modes such as large-scale combined armed conflicts, adding naval elements into ground battles? Gaijin's answer will be the same as always. We're always looking for new opportunities in order to add new game modes and also test new things for the community. Generally, it is actually quite positive, and trying little unique things here and there that we can add to the pre-existing game modes. We do events quite a lot, and also at the same time have tried to improve these game modes over time, and look forward to your suggestions in these areas. So my opinion on these types of things. As somebody who in the past has actually played some of these kind of user missions that were large-scale combined armed conflict game modes, they don't actually work, and they're actually super boring, because a lot of the time you actually spend not doing anything and just wandering around and waiting to get shot. There is this idea that a lot of the community have about looking at, you know how when you look at like a tactical military map, like I don't know if there's like YouTube channels that do it, but I'm sure there is, where they have it where they show kind of like a top-down view, and they show like where all of the kind of brigades are and all of where the armies are, and they show where they move around the map and how they to and fro and how they fight each other and all of this, and kind of like a strategy tactical game. There's like a bunch of people who play War Thunder who believe that that's possible in War Thunder, but it just ain't. And we saw that with World War mode, and we saw that with like a bunch of other things too. The game is just not designed for it, and because it's not a solo game, you know, and it's not a strategy game, because you end up having to, you can't control all of the pieces that are there. It isn't Hearts of Iron, right? It isn't strategy in that way, like large-scale strategy, but there's a lot of people who want it to be. And unfortunately, as I said, it just doesn't work. World War mode had fundamental issues with how it was set up and also how it worked. Stuff like, as I said, the user missions back in the day also just didn't work. So the idea also of adding naval elements into ground battles is ludicrous. They don't mix. It's like oil and water. Like literally, the naval side of it, you can only cap stuff in water. On the ground side of it, you can only cap stuff on the ground. They can't fight each other, and they never have been able to. I thought maybe back in the day, when the coastal stuff was being added into War Thunder, then maybe that would be a possibility. But then there was a lot of people who wanted the blue water stuff, and then I was like, okay, well, that's just going to be canned. Because, once again, in real life, they never kind of fought against each other in any large-scale way. And in War Thunder, it would also just never work in that way. I think generally what Gaijin will do is they'll just continue to try these like one-off events where they try different game modes or bring back older game modes, because you got to remember, like, they have done a ton of tests. Like, they did a battle royale mode, they did a kind of rush kind of game mode, or a gold thingy, kind of get gold rush game mode from like Bad Company. They did do an offense and defense game mode that they tested out. They did a battle royale that was also there. They've done the PvE testing with the AI stuff. They've done a lot of different tests with a lot of different things to try and get stuff going, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't ever seem to come to anything, because it's just not as good as the standard game modes. And even the modes that they add in, such as like Heli PvE, if you've ever, tried to go and play them, there's hardly anybody playing it. Like, once again, StatShark, right? 99% of the community in War Thunder play Air Arcade, Air Realistic, Ground Arcade, Ground Realistic, okay? The rest of the game modes, including PvE, so we're talking Air Simulator, Ground Simulator, Naval Arcade, Naval Realistic, and then all of the other game modes, all of those combined are about 1% of the community. So you want to add more game modes on top of that, which nobody is going to play. And this is the problem. There's also been a massive difference over the last few years where a lot of people are moving to to realistic, probably because of the event structure, because that's changed too. So people want more of these game modes, or they say they want more of these game modes, because a lot of them play stuff like Hearts of Iron and see these big things, but it just doesn't work. And I wish it did, but it just doesn't. The thing that I think would actually be kind of cool, which is something I've been talking about recently, is imagine if you had like a tactical map in your hangar, which is you and like your squad, or you and like a set of mates, and what you do is you have certain challenges that you complete on that map. Could be history related, could not be, it could just be standard challenges, and once you win specific battles, maybe you get specific profile pictures, maybe it gives you something at an end of a season if you actually get to a specific point, and it's challenges that you you can complete in the standard game modes. So X amount of kills with a certain type of vehicle, X amount of, X amount of fires set by a certain set of vehicles, maybe X amount of, naval vehicles destroyed. And then when you do that, it unlocks the next battle, and you just keep doing that over and over again. So it gives you an extra progression point to kind of push forward, and gives the guys who want the big tactical map that you can kind of push each other against, it can do that, because you could technically make it multiplayer. One side is one side of the map, and then the other side is the other, and then basically you complete objectives to fight each other to see who can do them the quickest. I think that is actually the way to make these work. I don't think there is another way that can work. There's also the average Swedish main who says, remember when you said you won't add top tier premiums, and that's the only way to get the top was through skill and dedication. What happened with that? Also, by the way, can you guys please tell the partnership department to actually read my application for once? Kind of a funny thing there. Let's see, what would Gaijin say? We appreciate that you want to be part of the partnership program, and we will review your application at once. We always endear for more people to make content around the game, because we like it in general to see your opinions. When it comes to the top tier premiums, they are not top tier. They are usually a rank below, or they are a batter rating below. This means that we have stayed standard with our thoughts from back in the day. Now, when it comes to my opinion, obviously it is pretty obvious from Gaijin that they have manipulated what they mean by this. And this is just like the standard thing. I don't know how else to put it, but the words that they use are generally designed to be ambiguous, so therefore they can change the reasons why they do things. This is kind of the standard that we've seen a lot in terms of War Thunder. So what does top tier mean? Well, Gaijin has always seen it as rank, and that's kind of how they've always done things. So, for example, if you have a look at the American ground tech tree, you have the Wolfpack, you have the M1KVT, you have the Clickbait, and you have the RDF-LT. All of these are rank 7, and the top rank is rank 8. Therefore, technically, these vehicles aren't top tier, even though 2 of them are 11.7, which is 0.3 below the top tier of the game. And this is how they do the word games, because they've always said top tier, and they've never actually defined what top tier is. They do this all the time with pretty much everything, and it just sucks, because it just means that we have, it's not even misunderstandings, because it's designed that way. It's perfect PR, basically. You invent a kind of statement which has a specific word in it, and then you just never define it. So therefore you can change it as you go along. And that's exactly what they've done with this, and also many other things. And it creates animosity because of the fact that, obviously, at the end of the day, people want to know why they've done these things. But then they can just turn around and say, sorry, we actually, that our definition is different, and we did the opposite. And then the next time this gets brought up, like in 3 or 4 years, they'll just say the opposite again. Because that's what they do. And it sucks. It really does. This is like a standard kind of company thing that all of these companies do, and I am kind of sick of it. I wish that we had strong definitions of things, so therefore people could be held accountable, but unfortunately with businesses nowadays the opposite is true, because it's more designed to protect the business instead of to protect the consumer. And that has been a problem since day one, and will continue to be a problem, not just with Gaijin, but with everybody. And it just sucks. It's awful, and I wish it wasn't, but it is. So those are some of the questions that have been asked to Gaijin. There's a bunch of other ones too, like ARB during confrontation, heli PvE mode, and big maps once again, because we're big map lovers here. But I generally don't really want to go over them, because it's amazing how we are over a decade into War Thunder as a game, and a lot of the questions just haven't changed. Everything is still the same. The clock keeps turning. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.